All right, I won't face anything, but we'll just,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so it is September 19th, 2022. My name is Jacob Lancaster. I'm an attorney who works for Legal Aid. I'm here with my client, Tony Newman. I'm kind of giving him a rundown on these debriefing documents, I like to call them, that we give to our clients after we represent them. The purpose of these documents is just kind of general education, how to protect your rights with landlords, and kind of processes that you need to go through when the landlord fails to meet their obligations. I know Tony's recording this so that he can refer to it in the future. In the event that Tony shows it to any of his friends or anybody else that has problems with their landlords, I want to be very clear. If you are not Tony, I do not represent you, and I am not giving you legal advice. Okay, so don't call me unless you make an application with Legal Aid first. So that's the disclaimer I need to make. I didn't want anybody misunderstanding. Okay, so generally speaking, most people have a vague understanding of what a landlord's obligations are and what your obligations are, but a lot of people don't know what to do when the landlord violates those obligations. And that's a problem because the law requires a very specific number of steps before you can turn that landlord's violation into anything that you can actually do or get. We would call that actionable, right? There are some hoops you have to jump through and boxes you got to check before you can turn the landlord's violation into something actionable for yourself, okay? I can't tell you how many times people come in through here that are getting evicted for unpaid rent, and I ask them why they haven't paid rent, and they say, well, the air conditioner's been out for 2 months, so I didn't want to pay. And I have to tell them, you could have done something with that air conditioner that could have helped you here today, but because you didn't do those things, you're still going to get evicted even though the landlord has not been holding up their end of the deal this whole time. So this is how you make sure that you protect your rights against landlords. So the first one is, everybody knows that a landlord has an obligation to repair things, but people don't know what to do when the landlord refuses to follow through on those obligations. If the landlord is failing to repair something, you fill out this sheet, or a sheet like it, and you produce a written demand for the repairs. Okay, now maybe your apartment complex uses work orders through some kind of work portal or something like that. Yeah, go ahead and do those work orders like you're supposed to, but do something like this as well. Double up on it. So what you do is you fill this up. You fill this with to the landlord's name, the landlord's address, or your main apartment office, and then from the tenant, your name, address. You explain what repairs need to be done here. Now, the only repairs that you can really make a fuss about are repairs that affect your health or your safety. That could include things like black mold. It could include things like the door doesn't lock, that affects your safety. It could also include things like heating and air conditioning and stuff like that, but we'll get to that later because that's kind of treated differently. So basically, you're not going to fill out a form like this unless...
Thank you, sir. Yep.
You're never going to bother filling out a form like this for something like a broken door jamb, or, well, not a door jamb, but like one of those little... Can you shut that door for me, Clark? You're never going to fill one of these out for like a door stopper, right? But most of the time people aren't mad about door stoppers anyways. It's normally things that really matter that you're actually willing to gripe about. So first thing you do is you explain what needs to be fixed. And then if you don't fix this within 14 days, it says, here's what I'm going to do, okay? Now, for normal things that need fixed, things that aren't air conditioning and heating, we'll get to those in a minute, these are your rights. After you give him this written notice and 14 days pass, and he hasn't fixed it yet, then you can either terminate the lease and move, you can make the repairs yourself and deduct up to $100 from your rent, or you can sue the landlord for any damage to your personal property that his failure to repair has caused. These are probably not going to be the most important to you. The most important ones that I hear all the time are heat, running water, hot water, electric, gas, air, or other essential services. So those are considered essential services, and your rights are different when the essential services aren't working, okay? If an essential service is not working, then you fill out this same written notice, and then here are your rights. You can immediately terminate the lease and move, no 14-day waiting period. You can purchase the essential service yourself and deduct the full cost from your rent, no $100 cap. You can sue for the decreased value of the unit and for damages to personal property. So this would kind of require you to continue paying rent, but once you've paid the rent, then you could sue to get it back based on, okay, well, I'm paying $500 a month, that's the fair rental value for this unit, but it has black mold in it. So maybe that rental unit is now only technically worth $100 a month, so you can sue him for the difference. My argument would be, if you don't have heating or air conditioning, that you should get the full amount back because it's uninhabitable. The value is zero, right? But this would require you to continue paying rent and then sue after the fact. Probably the most helpful one in a real emergency is you can temporarily move and then just not pay rent until the problem is fixed. So if it's a real emergency, you know, we're in a heat wave, it's 115 degrees out, your air conditioning goes out, you can go stay on a friend's couch, you can go get a hotel, something like that, and you don't have to pay rent. But you only have these rights if you have done this written notice first. Okay? So if the air conditioning goes out and you just go stay up in a hotel and you've never done this, then you're just out of luck. And when you try not to pay rent, you're going to get evicted. So you have to paper it up correctly first. So what you do once you've filled all this form out is you sign it, you date it, and then this certificate of delivery creates evidence of how you sent it to the landlord. You can either hand it to them in person. My advice is to send it by certified mail, because then you'll have a receipt. And make a copy of it before you send it and keep it for your records. The rest of these will go a little bit quicker. One thing that people don't know is that your security deposit or your repair deposit, they do not have to return it at all unless you make a written demand for it. Okay, this is how you make that written demand. Now, my advice is always make the written demand, because even if you know you're not going to get it, even if you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're not going to get that deposit back, if they are going to refuse to return it, they have to send you written explanation of why they're not returning it. There's two reasons that they can refuse to return your deposit. One is they have to use it to make repairs. Two is they want to apply it to unpaid rent. So let's say you got evicted for unpaid rent, and you have a judgment against you that says you owe $2,000. You know you're not going to get this deposit back. Demand it anyways, because what they're going to have to do is send you a letter saying, no, we're not giving you your deposit back because we're applying it to your unpaid rent. And they actually have to itemize it. So now what you have is a written notice saying the rent that you owe has been decreased by this much, right? So it helps you a little bit. If they don't respond to you or refuse to give it back within 45 days, you can sue them for it. Same thing though, to the landlord address from your name and the unit that you lived at, and then give them a new address so they know where to send the deposit. Then fill out the rest of it and do the certificate of mailing the same way. I always recommend sending it certified so you have evidence. Make a copy for your records and mail it. Whenever you move out of a place, it's always a good idea to have paper evidence that you returned the key. Okay? This is a very self-explanatory form. Our recommendation is take this form, meet the landlord in person, fill this out, that you returned the key on this date to this address, you sign it and date it, landlord signs it and dates it. The landlord hates your guts, doesn't want to meet with you, doesn't want to work with you, then you fill this out by yourself, the bottom half. This form here is the absolute worst case scenario form. I hope you never have to use it. If you get evicted in a hearing like we had today, Tony, they give you a number of days to move out, right? If you're still in the unit when those days run out, they can send the cops to come and drag you out and lock you out of your stuff. And right now, after you get a judgment against you in eviction, you have every right in the world to take your stuff out and move, right? But if the sheriff comes and locks you out, you don't have the right to your stuff anymore until you've paid your rent. They have the right to keep your stuff and sell it and apply it to your rent, with the exception of what we call exempt property. They are not allowed to keep this if you make a written demand for it. So here's the form you use to make a written demand. Now you might say, well, what the hell is exempt property? I don't know what's exempt and what isn't. Here's a list of it. So you start to fill this. If you get locked out by the police and you're separated from your belongings, get this form, go down the list, and say, do I have any of this locked up in there? And if you do, write it out on the line. Same thing. Fill out the certificate of delivery. I recommend certified mail. Make a copy for your records, including this information sheet, and then mail it. And they should give you your stuff after, I think they have a reasonable time to give it back, I believe is the rule. And if they don't, then you have the right to sue them for it. So my advice, take these forms, make a bunch of copies of them, and just keep them in a folder somewhere so you can use them and reference them and show them to your friends if they have problems with their landlords. And for now, that's all I've got. Your case was dismissed, Tony, so there's no longer any imminent threat of eviction. I do believe that they will be refiling. They might mess it up and we can get it dismissed again. They might do it right next time and you'll have 30 days 30 days notice to move. 30 days will probably end up being more than 30 days because first they're going to have to get it right. That might take them a week. You know, you might get the notice today, you might get it tomorrow, you might get it in a week. Then that 30 days has to run, and then there has to be a hearing, and then at the hearing you may well be given another 10 to 14 days. So I don't know how long it's going to be until they get it right. My advice is to just start planning right now, pack, and be ready to move as soon as you can. So that's all we've got for today.
Okay, the question I have, hypothetically speaking, under the circumstances, she's like, well, I will go for money that, as if I owe her something from somewhere, I don't know. I mean, hypothetically speaking, where could she come up with such said things at? Because the agreement was, like I said, between her husband and I and my girlfriend at the time. She wasn't maybe privy to that conversation, but she should be knowing everything because they're in business together. They should know everything.
If she sues for money next time, she's going to have the same problem.
Yeah.
You know, if you had an attorney there, if it was me again, I would just stand up and ask the same question. He lived there for 7 years. You never collected rent from him once. Why not? And my argument would be that the fact that you never collected rent from him suggests that is itself evidence that your agreement was to let him live there without paying rent.
Yeah, I've only seen him like 5 times in the last few years. So.
And in the world of contract law, which kind of applies to leases, in the world of contract law, they call it the course of performance, right? You can imply and interpret a contract based on the course of performance. And their course of performance is they let you live there for however long you were there, never collected rent. That course of performance suggests to me that the unwritten lease you had did not ask for rent.
That's correct.
And that argument next time, that argument will either win or it'll lose. It'll probably be before Judge Bruce next time. I don't know what she'd do with it. But I think it's a good argument. And even if they got the money judgment against you, they're probably not going to ever collect it. They almost never bother trying to collect these judgments.
Right.
So the money is almost irrelevant. I mean, it hits your credit, but it's you know, not much more than that.
Not too worried about my credit right now.
Okay. Well,
I'm just thankful that we've taken care of the situation.
yep, I'm pretty pleased too.
It was very.
I almost didn't believe it.
I mean, it was hard for you to tell me not to laugh. It was very hard for me.
Yeah.
But,
It's just some judges take real offense to
and
that.
I do understand that. But I mean, I think he was laughing too.
I think he was, but my big concern is I did not want you to come off as snide.
No, I didn't want to
To
either.
the judge.
No, I didn't want to either.
No.
No.
Most people would look at somebody sitting there laughing at an eviction hearing as kind of inappropriate.
Yeah.